Parenting is hard. It can also be rewarding, but getting through the grind to the good stuff can be a real struggle. And all of us could use some inspiration, encouragement, or just a reminder that we aren't alone on this journey. Sometimes even parents need a timeout.
Hi, welcome to Parents Time Out. This is the time during the week where we gather with other parents and share ideas, ask questions, and learn from each other because we know that parenting is done best in community. So thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Botto. I lead kids and students at Crossroads Church, and I'm also a mom and a grandma. And the news continues to be filled with violence, shootings, cries for justice. And as parents, how do we help our kids process what's going on in the world around them? These are hard conversations. So tonight we're having a special edition of Parents Time Out to address your questions on this. And we're joined by Dr. Dwana Thompson-Lenoir. And Dwana is a doctor of psychology, and she's the owner and therapist of Live Well Group in Cincinnati. And she has been working with kids, adolescents, and parents for decades, a couple of decades. So, Dwana, we're so happy to have you here tonight. And if you have questions for Dwana, you can actually go ahead and start putting them in the comments so she can get to them. But I met Dwana a year ago at a graduation party, and she is real, she is fun, and just in the limited amount of time that I have spent with her, I appreciate how direct you are. And so I'm really excited for our parents to hear from you tonight. So why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Okay, as Kim said, I am a doctor of psychology, the owner of Live Well Group, which is a psychotherapy practice in the Blue Ash area of Cincinnati. I am not a native of Cincinnati. I am originally from Chicago, Illinois. Been here about 6 years. I've been working in the field since the year 2000. I am a mom as well, a mom of 3, Denver, Destiny, and Dante. And I am also a wife of my husband, Ned, who I have been in a relationship with for a very long time. We were high school sweethearts. And so I am excited to be here with you all tonight. I also have a great deal of experience with very young children, 0 to 5, directing a young child institute program through Central Clinic as well. So a lot of experience with therapy, but 2 of the best jobs that I have is being a mom and being a wife.
Well, we're so glad to have you. That's really cool. You married your high school sweetheart. So you guys moved from Chicago to Cincinnati.
Yes.
And how did you end up in Cincinnati?
His job.
Okay.
Well, I came kicking and screaming. All of my family is in Chicago.
Nice. So you make a lot of trips back to the Windy City then to see family.
Yeah, when we can. Corona's got us all kind of stationary right now.
Yes, it's stationary. That's a good word. We're all stationary, not crossing state lines very often.
Right.
Well, we're really glad you're here, and we're going to go ahead, and as we're waiting for parents to ask questions, I think the big one that I hear parents ask over and over again is there is so much in the media right now, and we should try to shield our kids from what's on the news, but they hear things. They hear things from friends. They walk in when the news is on. So when is it appropriate to address racism and injustice, and how should we do it?
I think that when children ask the question, when they've been exposed to it via friends, sometimes media, and things kind of just flash, and we don't always have control over how they obtain the information. When children ask the question, that is the time to make the opportunity to sit down and discuss it. And the discussion should be genuine and also open and honest, because what needs to happen is children need to have factual information and information from trusted adults that they can rely upon. It's important that if they are questioning what racism is, that we give them the accurate definition of it, and that we talk about oppression by various groups of people, and that we talk about injustice toward various groups of people based on characteristics that that group presents with. And so while it is a very uncomfortable discussion to have, and we have to be honest about that as well, that it's difficult even for us to have the conversation. When they ask, we must give them the information, because if we don't give it to them, we also aren't aware of how they receive it. And so for me as a mom, I would rather sit my 12-year-old down to talk about the injustice. And, when he came to me asking about why things continue to happen to Black men, I had to be very honest, because the reality is that one day he will be a Black man. He's a Black boy in America right now, but one day he will be a Black man. And there are rules and things that he needs to be aware of concerning how to interact in this world, not to be inducing fear in him, but to be honest with him and to give him pure factual information, never giving too much based on age, because we don't want our kids worrying, but we also have to be very honest as we would be about any other topic. We have to be honest about racism and acknowledge, even again, it's not easy for us to talk about.
Right, it's not. And as a white mom, the conversations are going to be much different. And I will say, and many parents that I've talked to feel totally unequipped to talk to their kids about race or injustice. How do we as parents gain confidence so that we feel like we are more equipped to have those conversations?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we have to do is first acknowledge that we do feel inept to have the conversations. And then we have to go about getting knowledge the right way. If that means going to a training, if that means sitting with colleagues that are more knowledgeable about the topic of racism, it really is important that we educate ourselves and that we further our knowledge, because as much as we would want to believe that in 2020, these aren't the type of situations we're constantly confronted with, they are, and it's still happening. And so while we ourselves may not be racist or have racism as a tendency in our behaviors, the world we live in isn't as kind as we would like to think it is. And so it's important that we educate ourselves. And in Cincinnati, for sure, I know that there are diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings going on all the time. And so sometimes we have to take a break from the norm and put ourselves in positions and opportunities to gain knowledge that will equip us as parents, as people, to confront these difficult times and situations.
Yeah, and so you talked about educating ourselves. I didn't ask this question to be able to say this, but Undivided, which is a part of Crossroads, parents, if you're watching, Undivided is a great way to educate yourself. And also Groundwater. I went through Groundwater training.
Yes.
And it is very good.
Absolutely.
Very good. So, thank you for pointing out that, right here in Cincinnati, there are all kinds of trainings, and across the United States, there are trainings. Karen has a question. Let's put that up here. How do you balance protecting them versus isolating them? I don't want them to be in a bubble, but I also don't want to crush their innocent spirit.
Great question, Karen. And the key to that is understanding your child's developmental area, where how far they've been developed and where they are developmentally. You don't want to give them information that would be too advanced. If you are talking to your preschooler, you really want to find a resource that will help them understand, maybe a picture book. And there are books that are specifically written for each age level to discuss racism if you don't have the words yourself. You also want to be sure that you are allowing the children to lead the conversation, because that will keep you from giving them information that's too advanced, that they won't understand, things that are off from what they really are asking. They may just want to know, what does the word racism mean? They may not be asking you, why does racism exist, which is what you would want to go into as a parent. answer the question that they ask. And as sure as I am sitting here, as they develop, their questions will develop as well. And so when they are smaller, teeny boppers, we give them information that they can handle. As they progress in developmental stages, you also give them information that they can handle. And by the time they are, progressed into, let's say, middle school, high school, that information changes and they are given more details, because by that time they know that the world we live in is not as innocent as they have perceived it growing up. And so that's important, that you answer the questions that they ask and consider their maturity and their age as it relates to the information that you give.
I love answer the question that they have. I found that asking follow-up questions, like whenever my kid asks a tough question, I always ask a follow-up question. Sometimes to just buy me some time to get my thoughts together, but also even sometimes the question they ask, I misinterpret it.
Yeah.
And so asking a follow-up question, and you said, let the kids drive the conversation. What's something we should be looking for in our kids that might make us think, oh, I need to back off the information I'm giving them? What should we be looking for?
I think if a child continues to come back with, anything that says that they're fearful, anything that says that they didn't really digest what you said, it's important to kind of, ask them, is there a really good question could be, where did you get that information from? Or what makes you feel this way? You really want to tap into what's behind the inquiry, so that you are aware of what the child is experiencing. Because sometimes children are asking questions because they've been in a circle of peers that have been talking, and maybe they didn't say anything, but they weren't necessarily following the conversation well either, because they haven't been exposed to some of the language that they've heard. And so they'll come home and say, well, what is injustice? And a good question, so that you know exactly why they're asking, is, tell me where that question came from. What is it that you're asking me? That way you know that you're speaking to what it is they want to know, and that you are aware of what they've been exposed to. As much as we want to believe that we are in control, our children are exposed to much more than we could possibly control. And so even just sitting with peers can expose them to language, vernacular that we are not ourselves imparting into them, but they get it. And so we have to be very cognizant of that and be aware that we have to speak to their questions. And if they start to display behavior such as not being able to let the topic go, constantly asking questions about it, tuning into programs that are talking about it, maybe that is a sign or signs that they have unrest about the information. And so we have to sit and explore that with them. And again, this isn't going to be an easy thing to explore as a parent. It's difficult enough to talk about, hygiene and making sure that you do your homework and making sure that you're reading the amount of minutes that the teacher says read. But then to add very tough topics such as racism, it's difficult.
I love the follow-up. I'm going to use this a lot. The question on, where did you hear it? And how did that make you feel when you heard it? That is a great follow-up question, because that helps us really gauge maybe how much information they need, how much it bothered them. Is this just a passing question, or has this really been burning in them? That's really good. How, as we're talking to our kids, when do we need to seek help? What things might our kid be displaying where we need more than just parental intervention?
Increased fear, a lot of anxiety, worry, rumination, low mood, things that would indicate that your child is experiencing anxiety and or depression. And depression in children doesn't look the way that it does in adults. And so if your child starts to act out in school, if your child starts to talk back to you, if your child starts to withdraw from social interactions or friend groups. And again, I know that we are living in different times with Corona, but you have to be very aware of their patterns. Are they staying in their room more? Are they not accessing text messaging? You know, a lot of kids are texting. If they stop doing those types of things, if they stop wanting to play or, have any of their regular routines, that's a sign that maybe we want to get further assessment. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It just means that there's something impacting them. And so we have to look at those things and get the proper helps in place.
What if that's great. Because I think a lot of times parents, I think sometimes they think it's time to call in an expert when really it's not, when it just starts feeling uncomfortable. And so those are very specific things to look for. What about a kid who understands that there's injustice in the world, wants to make a difference? How do you guide them to actually take a step to do something?
Well, I think that, there in the last few months, I have seen a lot of kids spearhead their own organizations. They're spearheading merchandise that they're selling that is, highlighting that Black Lives Matter and that, we are all in this together. Children are very innovative. And as parents, it's important that, we kind of flourish that with them. Tell me more about why you're so passionate about this. How can I help you? What assistance do you need? What makes this something or a cause that you want to take up? And literally, kids are so mature nowadays. They'll tell you, I don't like when people are treated differently. I love my friends, and you've taught me to be kind. I want other people to know that this is a problem. And so we have to let them just kind of flourish it, grow it, so that they feel heard, so that they feel listened to, and that they are able to know that they have a voice, and that we won't stifle that, because sometimes children, they really do teach us lessons. And so allowing them to do so is always great.
That's right. Yeah, we can learn a lot from our children if we allow them to teach us. If we actually close our mouths long enough and give them the freedom to do some things.
Yeah.
I know you've been crazy busy or super busy lately, and you've had meeting with a lot of clients. Would you say for parents, what's the biggest question that they're asking you, or the biggest fear that they have just regarding what's going on in the world right now?
The biggest fear is that it continues to happen. There are always different types of trauma, different types of things that are happening in the media, maybe not directly impacting the community from which they are living, but they're fearful that we can't escape it. And it's sometimes it hits very close to home. Very often I hear Ohio parents refer to Tamir Rice when they're talking about the injustices that have gone on. And we know that that was a shooting that occurred right here in Ohio. And just, understanding that we have no control, but we really, really want to live in a world that is progressive, and that we can be assured that our children will be safe and will make it to adulthood and have very prosperous lives. But when you have things that are happening over and over and over again, and I'm talking about school shootings, I'm talking about abductions, I'm talking about police shootings, all of the things that are in the news, it is discouraging to parents. And so sometimes it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And there's no easy answer to that, and when I'm sitting with people, there's no easy answer, because I don't have a magic wand. As much as people believe that we could just, make things go away, we can't. And so we have to learn how to live and adjust in a world where these things may continue to happen. And again, when they do, we've got to be honest. We've got to even be honest about how it impacted us. When things happen and there's media coverage of things, we have to be transparent with our children. My son came to me this morning. He said, Black Panther died. And I was like, he did? And I didn't really know. I hadn't been tuned into the media. I just didn't know. And so when I went, I said, oh, wow. And he said, Mommy, he had been battling cancer. And I said, oh, okay. Do you know what cancer is? And it was a great opportunity to speak and to talk, to give him the knowledge that I have about cancer, and just to validate that it is okay that you really liked him as Black Panther, but that wasn't his identity. He was a human being. And so just really, really talking about those types of things. We don't have control over it, but we definitely have to live with it and adjust. And so we just have to kind of speak to the fears and make sure that we are being ourselves honest. That's the best thing that we can do, because this stuff affects us as well. We are not invincible. We are not, although we are adults, and to children, we're very big people and know exactly what's going on. The truth of the matter is that we don't know exactly what's going on, and we have to be transparent with our kids. We have to be transparent with each other. Just even as a psychologist, a lot of the things that are going on in the media show up in my own therapy, because I am confronted with these issues while I'm helping other people, but they're also impacting me. And so we just have to be honest.
Right. And we have a question from Karen that actually ties into that, where any advice on how to be transparent with our own feelings, but also not letting that fear overtake my kids as well.
Okay, Karen, again, another good question. When you are interacting with your children, there is no need for children to believe that we have it all together. And so in being transparent, you do want to say, yeah, that impacted Mommy, but you don't want to necessarily have a very intense emotional reaction in front of your child, simply because they will carry that. And our children, while they, are experiencing developmental things themselves, they don't understand when we are that emotional. So crying in front of our children will sometimes make them worry. But in being transparent, you want to be transparent in your words and in the fact that this is something that's even tough for Mommy. This is even something that Mommy doesn't understand. We'll get through this together. And as you learn based on your child's developmental age, again, share with them. I read something today that just really gave Mommy a sense of peace. I'm going to share that with you. And so just really, really engaging with them. They aren't little people, they're human beings. And so we have to really, really, really honor that they're going to have questions, honor that we are impacted by a lot too, and very much so want them to know that, but not in a sense where they're carrying our crosses as well.
How do we, because I know parents, as they've talked to their kids about what's going on in the world, they have cried in front of them, and they've gotten emotional. How much is too much emotion? I mean, it's okay to cry in front of your kids, right?
It definitely is okay to cry in front of your kids. But when you have crossed over to the point where your child is comforting you, that's a bit much.
Yes, because their brains aren't fully developed, and they aren't to the point where they can comfort us. Yeah, we don't want them to carry our burdens.
Right.
Well, it has been, Dwana, it's been so good having you on here with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And I think up at the top, you said that kids need trusted adults to deal with all this. And then as you talked, and we talked about parents feeling ill-equipped, parents are the people that the kids trust more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And so parents, if you don't feel equipped for these conversations, like Dr. Dwana said, educate yourself, look up some programs, read. There's so much information out there. Find a parent who you think seems to be doing it
What I
well.
was about to say. That's exactly what I was about to say, Kim. We've got to do this as a community. In my culture, we've always said that it takes a village to raise a child. And that is no truer words have been spoken. There are some times when I get overwhelmed with the fact that my children can give me a question in such a way that really requires an answer, and I'm like, oh wait, hold on, I gotta call in some reinforcements, and I'll call my sister or call my mom. That's important.
Yes, why do you think that is? You said in your culture that you've always lived by it takes a village. Tell me more about that.
And so when we were young and we were coming up, there was no difficulties in anyone's parent giving you direction or redirection. It was not uncommon for if someone's parent saw you doing something wrong, that they were able to chastise you. We have somewhat gotten away from that, in that, sometimes parents are like, don't say anything to my child. Don't redirect my child. I think that if we would embrace community more, it wouldn't make parenting as difficult as some of us experience it to be. And so, being able to have my children around you and your grandchildren, Kim, and if my child says something inappropriate, you say, oh, those aren't kind words. We don't use them, without saying, I'm going to tell your mother. Because you've already taken care of the issue. You've already addressed it. You've already stepped in a loving and caring way, but in a way to redirect them. It doesn't always have to come from the parent, because we should be in community with one another and understanding that what we bring to each relationship can enhance other relationships. There is not a reason why, if I feel comfortable having my children around you and your family, that we can't share in direction and redirection and lesson learning and teaching, all of those things.
Oh, I just want to go preach, sister. Yes, because it's actually beneficial for our kids to take instruction from other trusted adults. It's really, really good for them to have other adults that they know they can go to. And I even found, my kids are older, I found that I loved it when there might be something they didn't feel comfortable talking to me about, and they would go and talk to another trusted adult, whether it be an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor. So, so parents, that's your to-do this week. Find somebody to share with. And if you can't get more than 6 feet to them, then call them on the phone or FaceTime them. But again, Dwana, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we will be back. And if you want to get in touch with her, she is tell them the best way to get in touch with you.
The best way to reach me is to visit my website, www.livewellgroupllc.com. On that website, there is an opportunity for you to reach out via the contact page. There's also phone numbers and email addresses on that page that will help you with contacting me. Again, the website is www.livewellgroupllc.com. And I definitely appreciate helping in our community. And so I welcome the questions, I welcome comments. And if you're in need of mental health services, which isn't a bad thing, because we have to destigmatize persons who enter into mental health counseling. We're there to help. There's always help for the concerns that families, individuals, children face. And so we do want to get them the help that they need and not wait too long before doing so.
I'm so glad you said that, Dwana, because earlier I said sometimes we as parents, we think we don't have it, and so we're rushing to get somebody else to help. But I also think sometimes we as parents, we wait too long to get help. And there's all kinds of help around there. And I know for me, there were times where I would go to a therapist. I have my own therapist, but I also would go to
I
a
think
therapist.
everybody should have one.
That's right. Everybody in my house does. And I would go just to talk about my kid. Maybe I didn't know if it was time, if I should take my kid to a therapist or not, but I would just go and talk to a therapist. So yes,
It's
I
important.
highly.
And having your children in therapy doesn't mean that you failed as a parent. It doesn't mean that you have done something wrong as a parent. It's actually indicative of the fact that you care very greatly for your child to put them in relationship with someone that's going to help them, guide them, and give them the tools to navigate life.
I actually think going and getting help from someone else shows that you are a strong, brave parent. That is a sign of strength, and that's a sign of confidence. So parents, get help. So Dwana, thank you so much. This Wednesday at our normally scheduled time, we're going to have Brian Spears. He's a therapist. He's on staff at Crossroads. And I was in a training with him where he talked about just going through COVID and just some of the grief and things that we are facing. And so he's going to be talking about raising emotionally healthy kids, and we can't wait to have him. So we'll see you Wednesday at 8:30. And Dwana, maybe I'll see you at a graduation party here sometime in the next year. Yeah, but thank you so much.
No problem.
And thanks for tuning in. Good night.
Good night.